Well, U.S. Foods proudly presents Offset with Kinger and the Big Man alongside Jake Caulfield, the Big Man, and our buddy Dave Ricchini. I'm Rob King. Thanks to One Team Media, as always, for taking care of the production for us here. We couldn't do it without him.
No.
Couldn't even try to do it without him.
No, we could.
If we even thought about doing without him, we'd probably have to apologize to him. And our folks at North Park Lounge in Cranberry, this is where our home is, our buddy Brad Dressen. Great place. Get your Big Man sandwich here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to try. It's a good. They do a great job. It's a great cheesesteak here in Pittsburgh.
Phenomenal chicken wings.
Yeah,
great food.
Really,
in general. Yeah, it is great. It is great food for sure.
And the beach out back. By the way, the beach out back.
Yep, that's right. Summer, we're getting there. Are we in the summer yet? Is it going to start raining ever?
No.
Holy mackerel! So we a couple things we want to get to during the course of the show. Penguins have a new coach. Steelers have a new quarterback, and we haven't had the opportunity really to talk about either. Let's start, I think, with the Penguins hiring head coach Dan Muse. Your thoughts, Jay? They've hired a man who has coaching experience in the amateur ranks, does not have head coaching experience at the NHL level, although he's been an assistant.
Yeah, in Nashville and in New York under Peter Laviolette. So, and ran a penalty kill on both those teams. He was on both those teams, won the President's Trophy, one with Nashville, one with New York. I think he must have just wowed Kyle Dubas in an interview. They probably knew, cross paths probably multiple times, but his interview must have been outstanding and made him take another look and see what's up. I felt, and even we've talked over, since we've been doing this, once Rick Tocchet wasn't a guy that, he ends up going to Philly, then you can go any different direction. And I think the fan base, one thing is that a lot of people don't want to see retreads, like, another coach coming back because Peter DeBoer now has opened up, right? Fired, out of Dallas and all the things that go with that. They went a young way, a different way, first time go around. And I said he must have wowed them in the interview process to kind of really make this mark. And I also feel that you look at a big thing that they've talked about. I haven't met him, I don't know him. But I think when you are able to develop the young talent, that's what they're banking on. That's been the story for the Penguins here for the last couple of years. They got to go younger. They got to get faster. Well, then that's one of the reasons for this decision. Again, it's Kyle Dubas, and when you make that move and you make that decision, my thing all along when I mentioned Rick Tocchet before was you're not just a young team though. Mm-hmm. You're Sidney Crosby, you're Evgeni Malkin, you're Kris Letang, Erik Karlsson. Players and the other veteran players, Brian Russ, all to go with that. But when you have personnel that's superstar throughout their career, and now it's winding down, it's going to be how does that get handled over the process? Because at some time, some guys are going to play themselves. Just human nature. You're falling out of the game a little bit. How many minutes are you going to get? Who's going to handle it? Letting them know, hey, you're not playing 24 anymore. You're going down. It's backing up a little bit. There's a lot of pride with the guys we just mentioned, and they want to compete and they want to play as many minutes as they possibly can. You got to set the tone and you got to earn the respect. And that's for any level, anywhere you're coaching. You need to earn the respect of the players in your locker room. And you have to get it, and you have to get it right away. And I think that's going to be his mission. But again, it's Kyle Dubas loved what he must have heard from him, what he sees, and what he thinks he can do with the young talent coming up. But you got to handle that locker room. It's got to be that respect level has got to get there right away.
Dave, hang on. I'll get back to you on something else. I want to ask you about that, Jay, because when you are, and there's a long relationship with Mike Sullivan and the veteran players, and we know that. When you come in, and you maybe want to lay down the law or do things differently, you can't lose the veteran guys either. I mean, it's an interesting tightrope that he's going to have to walk here.
Totally agree with that. That's why I said I think there is a fine line with it. If you're young players, even the guys that guys that came up and played last year, they know they are the Penguins of the future and where they're going to be. But at the same time, they're still new to the NHL. And they immediately, wherever their coach is, they have to fall in line. They have to understand what's going on. And I said, that's a respect thing that's got to be earned from the coach. Coach has to earn the respect of the players, but the players have to earn the respect of the coach. So there's two things. And I do think the veteran players, that was why I mentioned Rick Tocchet before. I thought he was one guy. Dave, we talked a long time about this. He was one guy that he would walk in immediately, and there's a respect factor. Well, this is one thing that has to get taken. You cannot lose the veteran players, and what's going to go? It's got to be a mix of both. Because in other locker rooms, and it's not Sidney Crosby. What happens is if you see a disgruntled veteran player who's been all world for so many years, if it's sideways or something's there, that filters through the rest of the locker room.
Absolutely.
So
that's where people talk about coaches, Jay.
Yeah.
And coaches provide leadership, but veteran players provide. But the players within the locker room, that's where the leadership in most cases are going to come from. You're a young, impressionable player. Yes, you want to please the coach. You get to a certain point in your career, you also want to please the veterans too. You want to make sure that, and if they're not happy, like you said, that could permeate through. It is interesting. I don't anticipate that being an issue, but it is. No, it is something that has to be factored in.
I think in every sport too. From Mike Tomlin, how do you handle the players? There's respect. You have to have it, and I do think that's what. And believe me, he knows that, and somehow he's probably communicated with them already, talked. I think that's what he's got to get in line right away.
And for Kyle Dubas, Dave, I mean, it's not the only thing that's going to marry him to this franchise. Obviously, he's going to make moves. I think it's an interesting case. He came in, he tried to win with what he had, and now clearly he's trying to rebuild. He gave it a year or two. We saw Ron Hextall do that. And now Kyle Dubas is clearly trying to make some bold steps and redo the team in the image that he wants it to be in. And this is part of that. It's not, I don't think he's tied to this, and if one fails, they both failed. But I do think it's an important step in his evolution to make the team the way he wants to make it.
And that's one thing I liked that Dan said in his press conference. They asked him about his system that he's going to install. And he goes, I don't know yet. He goes, it depends on what the roster is going to look like with free agents, with the draft. So he wants to see what kind of team Kyle's going to be. I'm sure they're going to work hand in hand on that. But he's not going to come in and say, we're going to play this, we're going to play that way. But I agree. And like you mentioned, it was an interesting, it was not a name you heard.
Right.
You didn't hear any rumblings about Dan Muse. And you wonder why that was. Were there veteran coaches they were interested in, but maybe didn't like the situation with an aging roster? And, obviously Sidney Crosby he can still play at an elite level. Maybe a veteran coach didn't want to come into that situation. Or maybe, you talked for years about not playing younger players of the Penguins. This guy's got a long history with coaching. He coached Record McGorty, so he's got experience there. I'm very interested to see how that makeup's going to be. And I read an article. They talked to Nick Bonino, former Penguin. He had played for Dan in Nashville and New York, and spoke very highly of him. So it's going to be a lot of work. And this guy works tirelessly. Apparently, he's puts in a lot of hours, and you need somebody when you're. Not calling it a rebuild, but it's definitely a change in direction than we've seen for the last couple of years. And you need somebody that wants to put in the hours, put in the work, and wants to come in with an open mind, like he apparently does.
Well, I think I think too that I like the answer about the style of playing, because there's a lot of times in which, for example, the Steelers talking about an offensive coordinator. Let's bring in, there's a certain amount of fan base that's let's come in and let's run 5 wides and let's do, just because something is hot now or gimmicky or whatever, there's also tried and true. And, certain organizations are going to try to do certain things. Like, for example, when the Steelers tried to open things up when Tommy Maddox was here, right? After the Cordell Stewart years. Well, then they went back to running the football, getting Jerome Bettis and winning championships. And so, but I'm not saying there's one way to do it. I think your style has to match your players. You can say in baseball, we want to be a team that runs. Well, if you have a bunch of slow-footed guys, what are you going to do in the interim? Just lose games because, some giant guy is going to plod around the bases? Or you have to be able to me, you have to be able to have that kind of mixture. And it sounds like he's open to saying, let's play the style that best suits our players, maybe with an eye toward eventually getting into the style you'd like to ideally play.
The other thing I will say this, though, he's also coming to a team that hasn't been in the playoffs a couple of years.
Yes.
It's not like this has been a team that's made the playoffs and they rule,
Right.
There's changes needed to be made. And when that happens, that he's stepping in, he's going to be the guy making the changes. But if there was a team that was on a roll still and a coaching change had to happen, that's a little bit of the world. But this is a team that has not been in the hunt, hasn't been successful. And so he can come in, and that's something that he's going to drive to. He's here to change that and do it while Sidney Crosby's still playing at the level. I mean, this is they're really in an in-between phase right now.
Sure. Right.
Going younger, but I mean, you've got Evgeni Malkin still in the middle, the second line middle. I mean, you put Crosby and Malkin through the middle, 1 and 2. You go from there. But I do think, Rob, that's the one thing. We talk about Tomlin, as a losing season. In the hockey world, your goal, we all understand what the goal is, but you got to get in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't do it, changes are made so he can come in and rule. But he's still, no matter what, and I believe, I don't care if you're coaching kids. If you're coaching 10-year-old kids playing basketball, if the kids start running around and not paying attention to you, you're not getting anything done. Same thing applies. Just take it up. Now you're with guys making millions of dollars. But you have to earn the kids. Kids, if you're coaching young, they got to understand who rules, right? You get older, high school, you really got to rule in high school if you're a coach. You get into pros, and now you get guys. Now you've got different personalities, guys making money, and but you got to rule the locker room. You got to have full control of it. Not everybody's going to like everybody, but you got to have the respect. I had a coach, my first at University of North Dakota. Gino Gasparini was a guy that everybody respected, and there was a fear when you went if you weren't doing what you wanted. That was my first taste, really, really, of Division I hockey and where that was leading to. And the players coming out of there, I always felt players coming out of North Dakota felt like they were all ready to be a professional player because they dealt with a guy that ruled. And then you had to play and perform, or you weren't in a lineup where you didn't get a missed thing. I just truly believe in every phase you need it, and he's going to earn it. And I hope he does it right away and gets the team off to a great start. And it's going to be right around the corner.
I was going to ask, how do you think the lack of playing experience affects it? Played D3, never played in the league. Even he said he wasn't a great D3 player. How do you think that's going to resonate with the veterans?
If you cannot get the respect of them, then that's one phase that's a really good point, Dave. Not everybody you didn't have to be a player to be a great coach. In fact, some guys who are, a lot of phrases like those who can't teach, kind of that phrase, right? Some guys are just great coaches, can be a great coach. That's why I truly believe when I say the respect, they have to, it's a really good point. He has to get the respect of them. And he can't come down the playing. He understands that I did not play at Division I hockey. I did not play in the pros. His makeup has been he's turned into the coaching world, and he's got to be good at it. And that's why I think, I said he has to earn it right away. And if he does that and he wins over the star players, everybody's got to fall in the soup. But again, I will say, you cannot. There are certain guys have earned. There's different sets of rules. Michael Jordan had a different set of rules.
Lawrence Taylor,
player, right?
That's right. Yeah.
It just that's the way it goes. They earned it, right? Like Roy McIlroy saying, "I earned the right to not speak to the press if you don't want to." In his world, in the hockey world or football world, certain guys have earned the right, and you give them a pass. But it can't be. You cannot. You have to be careful how you punish somebody else if you're not addressing that. Now, if you don't address it with a guy that scores 40 goals a year, okay, that's your answer. But if you're not producing anymore, and you're a third or fourth line player that's trying to get there, you cannot just come down on that guy and let somebody who's not producing enough up top. They're the fine lines that make that happen. But I think he can get over that. I believe he'll get over that. He's in the NHL's assistant, and he's got to set the tone right away.
One last thing, too, I wanted to say about the Penguins. They're in a very interesting position. They haven't made the playoffs in 3 years, haven't won a playoff round in 7 years, 7 or 8 years. It's been a while. So, and again, we talk about rebuild. You have to be careful what you're wishing for. Like, people talk about that in regards to the Steelers, who we're going to get to in a minute. And I just point out the Buffalo Bills. Do you really want 20 straight losing seasons? Yeah. And again, the Bills, they have Josh Allen, and they've got an opportunity. They haven't won yet.
Yep.
So you have to be, people think, well, if we're going to rebuild, that's how we win a championship. Well, careful, because there's lots of teams that have rebuilt and not won a championship.
Chicago and Detroit.
Yeah.
Just NHL. Look what happened. Right. All world franchises.
Yep.
And now look where they're at.
It's very interesting to see if there is a little more I mean, what road are they going to go down here? Now, what decisions are they going to make? Are they going to make, even if they decided rebuild, it's going to be a rebuild on the fly. It's not going to be we'll see in 3 more years. I'm sure they want this to happen quickly, but I don't know what their appetite is for sacrificing a season at that. I don't know what any teams is, because look, you need fans to show up too. The organizations need fans to make money, especially in the NHL, where I think the line is much thinner than it is maybe in other sports.
You go halfway through this season coming up, you go halfway through and it's flat. Let's just say it's flat. But you got to have a team that the fan base has got to relate to. Like, you got to be hard workers every night. You got to be that physical element that's going to be in there. You got to have something that shows everything we just talked about with the U.S. Open and about what Pittsburgh's all about. You have to have a team that, if you're not a Sidney Crosby and you're not, you have to do something, and you have to bring that every night. That's what he's got to get. In my opinion, he's got to get that out of his players. And when they step on the ice in game 1, that they're ready, that the show's on kind of thing. That's what I think. And if they're flat through half season, then I think you're going to see movement of,
right.
I think you get it, and maybe it happens sooner. I don't know, but I think you got to see what you're putting together, because I said that really is the craziest part right now. They're really in between,
right? Which is a tough place to be in sports. Very, very tough.
So Kyle Dubas is really he's got his mark. He's making these moves and trying to put it all together. This is going to be the first couple months of this new regime. What they're going to do, and then how this young players going to perform, and what elements do you have in your game that are going to make people want to stand up and like what they're seeing.
Right. And again, I mean, like, for example, we're not going to delve too deeply into this, but how quickly can you turn it around? How quickly can the young guys come around? You make a trade, you get that trade with Carolina, you wind up with a draft pick. That draft pick winds up being Harrison Brunick, who they think can be a really, really good defenseman. How quickly can he get here? I mean, we're already seeing some of it happening for the Penguins.
Yeah, and Dave, and just one thing too, McGroarty and Koivunen, when they came up, all of a sudden you had 2 lines. McGroarty got hurt then late.
Right.
But you had 2 lines that all of a sudden that 2 lines are thrown out.
Right. Another trade, by the way.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So, but how quick do guys develop? They got to get opportunities. How quick do they develop and get the opportunity? And again, there wasn't room under Mike Sullivan's plan of what they were trying to do, right? The fit wasn't there. What they were still trying to make something happen. I think right now it is going to be huge things coming up, but I do think they have enough. They're pulling pieces together. But these first couple, when you get in training camp, I always look at it too as a player. Like in NHL right now, if you're an NHL player, you're fun. You get eliminated, and you're trying to enjoy yourself before you get back to the grind. It's changed a lot. But when you see the Stanley Cup Finals coming to an end, you're now immediately. It's mentally now you're in the next season. Then when the NFL training camp starts, you're the next domino to fall.
Right.
There's no more fun in the summer. It's not. Yeah. You're rolling. But it's the way the mind works. And I think these next couple of times communicating between coaches and players and who they're going to have, and the talk with Kyle Dubas and his staff, Dave, I think are very big. I do think, though, the question you pose is really good, because how do you get over that you weren't at that level, and and it's going to be it's the respect thing, and we'll keep saying that over and over as we go through this year.
All right, we'll get lots more NHL stuff coming up as soon as the playoffs conclude and all that stuff, and we can kind of wrap that up in the NBA playoffs as well. I want to remind folks that U.S. Food will do whatever it takes to ensure you reach your goals, keep your guests coming back. I want to thank them for sponsoring Offset with Kinger and the Big Man. Another big story, Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh finally, right? Yeah. The last time we talked, he had not quite signed. We thought he was going to. And I know you have some strong feelings about what Rodgers still has left in the tank, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Well, first of all, the excitement level all kind of coming around together. It's big. Look, you saw what the quarterback room was. I think Aaron Rodgers looks like I didn't see him disengaged when we were watching him with the Jets and what was going on there, not going to camp. I understand that. Look, again, I think he's there. I think everybody's fallen in the line. Quarterback room. It's tough for Mason Rudolph, because I think he was the one guy that's really right.
But he signed for $4 million. When he signed, he knew he wasn't going to be the starting quarterback.
Great point. So now you go with Aaron Rodgers, and the way that you're at camp, you're attending their camp. For me, I watched so many of the games last year, the Jets, and just because of watching them through Green Bay and the following of that, and because there's nobody. There have been so many great quarterbacks. He is that one. When we're losing all these great quarterbacks that we're not seeing anymore, the game diminishes. He brings something. He releases the ball different than other quarterbacks. I watched him give, and he took the brunt of it because of how maybe he came across to the fan base in New York and the general public. But Rob and Dave, I watched the Jets give away. Their defense was supposed to be good. Their defense wasn't any good last year, and they weren't much better on the offensive side. But the fact of the matter is, he gave his team a lead multiple times. Maybe 4 or 5 games they had the lead, and they gave it up. That wasn't on him. His defense. They weren't any good.
Right.
They gave up leads. And so otherwise it would have looked much different. I think he's got something to bring. I think certainly a relationship with Tomlin and what it means, what we hope the Steelers defense, and Rob, you and Dave can get off on that. I think truly, if the defense comes to play and turns balls over, gives them short fields, and I think what he's going to do with the weapons, as we talked about the receiving core, I really like it. 1 year, let's see what happens.
Right.
I think he's got something left in him. I think the excitement along with that is ramped up with him being there.
There's a lot of different ways this can go. People are already talking about, well, next year they'll draft a quarterback. And I think they probably will try to. But hey, if he leads them deep, there's what's stopping you from bringing him back. Now, I was just going to say one thing. The athlete today, it's different. It's different. Look at Sidney Crosby. Look at Brad Marchand in the playoffs. Look at Corey Perry, 40 years old. Right.
The athletes, it's different today than it was before. I'm not saying you don't break down. I'm not saying all that stuff doesn't start to happen. The release isn't. Maybe something's off or a little bit different.
The arm strength, maybe. Right.
Yeah. All those things can kind of happen. But it's different. 40 today, it's not the same as what it used to be.
Right.
I mean, 40 today, you were wheeling somebody out at 40 before the NFL. Today, it's different. The athletes of today are different.
So that brings me to the big point here, Dave, about Aaron Rodgers. And I think that I'm going to separate. He seems to have become a polarizing figure. He's on the Pat McAfee show and doing other things, and he's outspoken. He was on Jeopardy. Look, people are going to feel about him one way or the other. I'm not here to talk about that because, frankly,
right,
I don't care. Really, the question for me is twofold. One, is he going to command and be well respected and well liked within the locker room? I've never heard any former teammates of Aaron Rodgers say anything. I've heard lots of fans have opinions. Maybe I'm wrong about that. And the other thing is, does he still have good football left in him? Coming off the Achilles last year, off to the slow start. And again, you could argue, well, he should have been at minicamp. Maybe that would have helped him get off to a better start, whatever. Down the stretch, his numbers were quite good down the stretch. Touchdown, interception ratio, that sort of thing. So can he still play? And, what's his presence in the locker room going to mean, either good or bad? Those are the questions for me.
I think he's going to be helpful for a young offensive line. He's going to help that group. I mean, he's going to be critical. He's not afraid to wear his emotions on his sleeve. If he's not happy with whether it's the protection, whether it's a receiver running the wrong route, he'll see some demonstrations on the field. I think they see him as a high football IQ, a guy that can make all the throws. And going back, think about this. He said in his 40s, he hasn't won for a while. How is he going to be remembered? If he doesn't get back, if he doesn't do something late in his career, people aren't going to remember the success he had when he was beating the Steelers in the Super Bowl. It's been a long time since he's had that success.
Or that big of a year, really.
Right.
His last couple of years, and he was always unbelievable at not throwing interceptions, taking care of the football. Last couple of years in Green Bay, those interceptions total started to go up.
Oh, he had elite talent, too. Devontae Adams all but 1 year. Yeah. Garrett Wilson. Devontae Adams last year for 13 games. Those are 2 really good wide receivers. So he's had the tools there. Maybe his last year in Green Bay, it wasn't because that's when Adams was with the Raiders, but he's had the tools to put up the numbers.
Yeah, he has. But I will go with this too. They never drafted an offensive skill position player when
it was all defense the last 6 or 7 years.
Never.
All their first rounders.
They lucked out
this year at Green Bay and drafted a first-round wide receiver.
In fact, when they drafted, I believe the story is when they drafted Love, he thought it was getting a call that it was going to be another receiver coming in, right? Instead, they put the hammer down and get Jordan Love, which you have to do. They have to make the move, right?
Wound up being a really good pick.
But think about that. To me, you're not building, or they didn't give something on, even though they, look, again, I watch Green Bay all the time. watch the games. They didn't give him what he wanted all the time. And what he thought he was at least going to get over all those years. Not one number one pick was on that side. So, but he also did have, like, the guys that played for him. Yeah, I think if we see DK Metcalf being happy, this team is going to be really happy. I think he's got to keep them happy.
Yeah, my expectations,
I think he can do it.
Have been raised. My expectations are higher for this team than they've been in a while. I think twofold. I think Omar Khan and his staff, Andy Weidel, they've just continued to make this roster stronger and stronger. We talked about that in our last podcast. I think they attacked all the needs they needed to attack. They felt like they had to upgrade their secondary. I think everybody saw they had to upgrade their defensive line, add more talent there. They've done those things. They want more game-breaking ability. DK Metcalf, Caleb Johnson, running back, they feel like they're going to be able to do that. And now you've added a guy who, to me, I've said this many times, I think he's the best thrower of a football I've seen in my life. Nobody can do the kind of things, left, right, forward, back, left foot, right foot, standing in the pocket, throwing on a dime, lofted over somebody's head. He has every throw. I've never seen anybody like him as far as pure throwing of the football. And I still think there's stuff in the tank, as evidenced by, I think, the way he played down the stretch last year.
How about for you, the relationship between offensive coordinator and quarterback? I think that's going to be another, who's ruling the roost a little bit. Like who's going to be? Are you giving them the freedom, the change, and things at the line of scrimmage? That's got to be smooth too. And nothing's always. I mean, you go through battles of, we know football, there's two different teams. You got the defensive side, you got the offensive side. And you got a coordinator, you got to have great coordinators, but you got to have respect between those two. That quarterback and offensive coordinator, they have to be in sync as well. I think that's something to look for.
Because, especially with DK Metcalf, you give Rodgers the ability to read the line. He's one quick slant away from taking it to the house with his speed. You talk about who's, I think, the biggest beneficiaries. DK Metcalf for sure. Pat Freiermuth. This is a guy that targets tight ends. And he had Robert Tonyan in Green Bay. He had Tyler Conklin last. These aren't big name tight ends. Unlike Russell Wilson, he's going to throw the ball over the middle. Check downs of the running backs. Running backs always caught the ball when Aaron Rodgers was quarterbacking. Aaron Jones, last year was Breece Hall, high 50s in catches. That's going to be good news for Warren, for Gainwell, for Caleb Johnson, guys that can make plays in the backfield. So that's the other thing too, is he's older. He doesn't want to take any hits. So he's going to get the ball out quick. So you better be ready if he is calling adjustments at the line.
Yeah, I kind of like the way that sounds because it keeps everybody off balance and keeps I think if you're an offensive player right now, you're kind of really loving what's taking place. And I felt the way we saw the clips of camp, it looked that way to me. There's a look for that. Right?
Yeah.
There just is. It's a different vibe, and you need it. You need something fresh. This is something really like fresh to Pittsburgh. And it's really wild because you said something about this. You said this maybe mid-season last year, and you said, "What do you think about Aaron Rodgers in the future?" And it was way. I think it was mid-season.
It was because you could sense it ending in New York.
Yeah,
and you wondered as it was kind of towards the latter half of the season when the Steelers were starting to falter a little bit. You wondered, They are still waiting for maybe one more one-year quarterback. Could he be the guy? By the way, Darnell Washington is another guy that I think could. How'd you like to? He is just massive, guys. He is a large man. And if you're a safety, because a lot of the stuff you talk about Russell Wilson, a lot of the stuff to Darnell was out in the flat. Well, if he catches, you suck up the linebackers, you throw over the top. You're a safety having to come up and tackle Darnell Washington. That's not going to be a lot of fun. And so I do think there are areas that, by the way, I was at, DK Metcalf wasn't at the OTAs, but he was at the mandatory minicamp. And the first time he lined up, I did a little double take. I'm like, wait, who's number 4? Then of course it's DK Metcalf. But before I realized, it's DK Metcalf, I'm like, my goodness, that's another large man that can't be much fun to tackle. And as we've seen, great effort guy. He'll get out willing to block, which of course is music to the Steelers' ears. But they have some big targets that aren't going to be fun to tackle.
And I could see them still adding another veteran. The guy that Rodgers can trust. If you lose his trust, you won't get the football. I mean, they did. I mean, they didn't invest high draft picks in guys, but Christian Watts and Romeo Dobbs, when they were in Green Bay, if they ran the wrong route or if they had a drop, like, he's not throwing to them again. So Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, beware.
I can't wait to watch it.
Last thing, I'll add this. We talked about coaches having their own respect. Aaron Rodgers, when he steps in the huddle, that respect. So there's always something different right there, and he's going to maintain that. There's a different respect level.
Yeah.
It's when he walks into that huddle the first time in the first game.
Yeah.
I
think Russell Wilson had that last year, but I think that to your point, it's just going to but that changes year to year and quarterback to quarterback.
Right? Though it can't be canned. It's got to be kind of real. Like
Aaron Rodgers is definitely going to be real.
Wilson had
your
all
point.
phrases.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Everything the teammates wanted to hear.
Yeah, it can't be. It's got to be. The guys feel, how they're looking at him going.
Well, I'm excited to see it, Jeff. I am excited to see it, Dave, too. Yeah. Can't wait. Thanks to U.S. Foods. Again, thanks to One Team Media for setting this all up and bringing you this program. Our thanks to our home away from home here, North Park Lounge in Cranberry. Come out and check it out. It's a great place to hang out. Great food as well. For Jay Caulfield, Dave Ricchini, I'm Rob King. Thanks to you for watching this edition of Offset with Kinger and the Big Man.